Morning, everyone. I hope that you can hear me okay. If you have got any problems with the sound, please do let me know. Or if you can't see my screen, also please do let me know. Thank you ever so much for everybody that has joined the webinar. I hope you find it useful. My name's Frankie and I work for a company called The Agency Works. Just to give you a bit of a background, we're the implementation partner of a project management tool called Synergist. Not only do we sell the project management tool, but we also do a lot of consulting around things like business processes, agency management, with over sort of 500 agencies all across the UK. Okay, and like I said, today we're going to be looking at capacity planning and resource management, focusing on three particular topics. So just before I get started, I'm going to release a poll because we've actually got a surprise draw at the end of it. So I will gather the results at the end and I will announce the winners. So would you like to be in for a chance to win 2 tickets to the B2B Awards in London on the 24th of November? It's a brilliant event. I've been to a couple myself and yeah, they're really, really good. So please do answer that. No worries if that's not the type of thing that you want to do. No hard feelings. So I'll just wait for people to answer that. I'll give it 2 seconds and then we will commence. Okay, I think we've got enough answers. All right then, so to begin the webinar, I'm going to be talking about, like I said, 3 particular topics, okay? And those topics are, why are agencies finding capacity planning and resource management a challenge and how can this be addressed? The second one is, what effect does inaccurate capacity planning and resource management actually have on an agency? And number 3, what are the benefits of using the correct tools and actions, in which I will be talking about today? So the first one, why are agencies finding capacity planning and resource management a challenge and how can this be addressed? Okay, so the 5 main points that I will be going over today and the 5 main challenges in which, due to working with a number of agencies for 20 plus years, are that to begin with, I think number 1, that agencies must know how many hours they have to sell. Okay, so we're going to be looking at that in just a second. The second one is estimating accurately. A number of agencies haven't got estimating accurately down to a T, and it is a hard thing to do, and all of these things will obviously help that as well. Things like having the visibility on the estimate versus actual is a massive help to that. The second one is actually organising those estimated hours, so ensuring that you're scheduling from the estimate and also having accurate reports on that capacity. Okay, so just to go over that first point that I mentioned, this is just a typical calculation. Obviously, do excuse it. It is a real ballpark calculation. It could work for any agency, whether you've got 10 employees, whether you've got 100, whether you've got 500, 1,000, 20. It really doesn't matter. Okay, now I haven't taken things like holiday, sick days into account here. But just to give you an idea, so if you've got 10 employees, obviously 37.5 hours a week, and if you want them to be something like 70% utilised, that would mean you need to sell 265 hours a week. Okay, so to meet that target, one thing that we've noticed working with a lot of agencies is they don't have a separate estimate to the quote. Okay, so that's one thing that I think agencies benefit from massively in the capacity planning and resource management, is actually keeping that estimate separate from their quote. So, excuse me. What I mean by that is your estimate should be an internal budget. You should be taking into consideration any time, materials, purchases required to deliver the brief requested by your client or prospect, maybe at this stage. Okay, so how many hours do I need to spend on this? Who do I need? How long have I got to complete it? And also, do I need to order anything externally from a supplier? Okay, so you need to take those costs into consideration within the estimate as well. So this is purely internal for you guys, for your capacity plans as well, to see how many hours do we need realistically. Now, one thing just before I move on to the quote area, okay, so this should always be true, honest, and accurate, okay. Now, a lot of agencies, so they'll have an estimate, and they may send that as a quote to the client. The client may come back for whatever reason. You need to manipulate the value on that quote estimate. Sorry. Now, if you say estimated 100 hours of a designer, for example, they come back and they say, you know, for whatever reason, you need to manipulate it, either add value or discount value. The thing not to do is to reduce those hours, okay, because that will put all of your capacity plans out. It will also not give your studio team a realistic vision of what they need to be completing for a particular task within a job. So this is where the quote comes into play, okay? So the estimate's your internal, what do we realistically need? The quote is, right, now let's commercialize this, okay? So we've got our estimate, but now what are we going to sell it for? Now, obviously, in a perfect life, we would just take the estimate and send that as the quote, get that approved, no changes needed. That's perfect. If there are changes needed, you do it within the quote, not the estimate, okay? Because the estimate's what you actually do need, what it is going to cost and what you should be charging. The quote is externally, what are we going to sell this for? Okay, so some of those points that you can see on the screen there, okay, just basically go over what I've just mentioned. So this is looking at the value that you're happy to sell this particular job for and what your prospect or your client is happy to buy it for. Okay, now the next area is looking at, so we've built our estimate, we know exactly, you know, how many hours, who we need, etc. The next thing to do is look actually at, so we've got this job, we've got this many hours estimated of this resource, but when do those hours need to be scheduled? Okay, when do they need to drop into our capacity plans? When do we actually need those resource? Because you may have I don't know, 10 hours estimated for a particular resource, but do they need to do those 10 hours in 1 week? Or have you got a month to spread those across? Okay, so that's really important, not only for obviously capacity plans, but also organisational purposes. You need to see when you're available, okay? So things like this, I mean, whether you do it within a system or whether you do it within Excel, it's a massive, massive help to those capacity plans. And then that will enable you to schedule those hours out to the resource in the correct areas. Okay. And the second thing is the capacity plans. So by putting those estimated, true, accurate estimated hours into a Gantt chart or anything to organise, we've got these hours estimated, when are we going to complete them, should give you really true, realistic basically capacity plans, okay, of each of your resource. So you can look at availability, you can, you know, start scheduling those hours out to the resource because you know exactly what is coming in advance. Okay, so there's not going to be any shocks there. Obviously, you know, jobs can come through quickly. That makes it sort of more important to ensure that everything is true and accurate within that capacity and resource management system. Okay, so the next area is the scheduling that I've mentioned. Now, again, whether you do this in Excel, whether you do it verbally, whether you literally shout across the room, or whether you have an internal meeting at the beginning of the week to say, these are the hours we've got, this is what the jobs are, this is who needs to do it. Okay, it may be a traffic manager that's doing this. Something like this, the reason I've brought it up is purely because those hours that you can see at the bottom there, okay, are actually taken from an estimate. So it's all well and good giving the jobs to the resource. However, you need to make sure you're giving those accurate estimated hours to the resource. Okay, this will allow everybody to have a stable, accurate plan of hours in which they are required to carry out. Okay, and that can obviously, if that doesn't happen, this is when we're going to start talking about what effects this could have on an agency. Okay, so obviously the second question, what effect does inaccurate capacity planning and resource management have on an agency? So this report here is some stats taken from a recent food report in which we carry out on a quarterly basis. This is actually a comparison from 2015 to 2016, and you can see that the biggest financial challenge, okay, sort of ongoing, is over-servicing. Okay, so over-servicing is a massive effect, all right, from inaccurate capacity planning and resource management. So inaccurate estimating, other reasons. So we've got inaccurate estimating. We've also then got things like spending too much time on a job. So if we're not giving our studio team the correct number of hours in which we've estimated accurately, that's going to cause them to go over. Also human error, which I know obviously, that cannot really be helped. It happens from time to time. But if you're estimating and also if you're recording time accurately, you'll be able to identify if it happens too much. And you'll also be able to look at patterns that may be occurring, whether it's with a particular job, a particular client, maybe a particular resource. It could be due to amendments. It will give you all of that visibility. And then if you actually report on that and look at, so it's with this particular client, or say a particular type of job, and we keep going over on the particular estimate, it's because of the amendments, okay, that have been recorded that we haven't actually estimated for. So maybe you can that will give you the ability to go back to your client and obviously give the evidence and say, look, we've estimated this amount. Actually, we should be charging this amount. It may allow you to renegotiate. And then it may also allow you to look at things like, okay, so when we're building our estimates, maybe we should allow, a few hours, maybe have a separate phase, a separate area of the job to allow more hours for things like amendments. I mean, it might not be amendments, it could be a number of different things, but that's just, as an example. Okay. Also, using a different resource. So it may be that you've estimated for a senior, okay, to complete a particular task within a job. It may be that a junior has actually carried that job out. Now, this may kind of equalize itself slightly, obviously due to the cost and the charge, but then the capacity plans, again, are going to be off because the junior may take longer than the senior. Okay, so when estimating, you also need to consider different resource because this could also be due to over-servicing. Okay, sorry, a reason for over-servicing. And finally, client moves the goalposts. All right, so this again is kind of what I said about the amendments. It may be that the client changes the brief, in which case we would always recommend go back to that estimate, okay, and actually change the estimate. And then whether or not you're charging for that, possibly send an extra quote out. But if the client is moving the goalposts, you should always consider that. You should always include that into your estimate, whether it's in a separate area. That's probably, recommended. That will enable you to see, right, okay, so that capacity actually is now full in, whether it's a week or months to come, because our client has changed the brief slightly, in which case we need to change the estimate. Okay, so just to kind of briefly go over that, so the top tips for capacity planning and resource management are to estimate accurately and honestly, okay, because that is what's going to drive your scheduling, your capacity plans, obviously your estimate versus actual as well, so your time recording. It's basically what drives the whole studio team. Okay, the next one again is scheduling those hours from the estimate. So, whether you do that in a meeting room, on Excel, in a system, those hours that are given to the studio should always be from the estimate, which should be as true and accurate as possible. The next thing is ensure that you're reporting on capacity. So you know the availability of your studio team. So if a job comes in, you can see from doing the Gantt chart when those hours actually need to be carried out on other jobs that you may have going on or may potentially have going on, in the future. You can then come back to your client and say, look, we've got availability here, here, and here. Okay. Or it may be that you can say we've full on that particular capacity that is needed to carry out the job. We need to get a freelancer in this area for this job. All right. And the next thing is set accurate timescales on jobs. So going back to the Gantt chart, ensuring that you don't just put an estimate together and give it to somebody, because that's not going to give you any capacity plans. You don't know when you need to do those hours. The studio team, you don't know if the studio team is going to be busy in a month, busy in 2 months. If you set timescales on jobs, you will know that, okay, because that will fall through on your capacity plans. Okay, and another thing is have all of those features integrated. So not necessarily features. You don't have to use a system to do this. It may just be those processes. So ensure that all of those are interlined. So having your estimate, then Gantt that estimate, or put a time scale on that estimate, and then schedule the hours from that estimate. It will just make things so much cleaner, so much smoother, and it will make everybody more aware of what's required of them. Okay, so what are the benefits of using the right tools and actions? So this will give the visibility to make more informed business decisions regarding availability. Again, something that I mentioned before. So you can then have those plans. You can go to your clients and you can tell them when you've got availability. If you've not got the availability, you can make prior plans. So you can say, right, we need to get a freelancer in because I know, based on all of the estimates that we've got in the system, based on all of the live jobs, we haven't got the resource to carry that out. Okay, improved organisation within the business, obviously. So everyone, like I said, will have visibility on what's required of them. It will, run a lot smoother by having those processes in place. And finally, that will provide happier staff, happier clients, and happier management, because they also have visibility and they have, almost like the confidence that the targeted hours are being delivered. If they're not, again, you can start looking into that. You can start looking into why. Is it because we're not estimating enough hours? Whatever the reason may be. Okay, so capacity planning and resource management can make a huge difference to a business. I think that capacity planning and resource management, obviously aside from sort of your sales, your pipeline type things, really does drive a business, okay, because ultimately an agency sells their hours. Yes, they may have obviously purchases with markups on alongside of that, maybe some, materials as well, but evidently, hours are key. So your studio, you're basically selling your studio's time. Okay, so that was 20 minutes up already. I'm just going to release another quick poll. So if you wouldn't mind just answering it for me. Now I'm just going to have to escape from that because it doesn't seem to be letting me. But if you guys could just take 2 seconds, I would really appreciate it. So my next webinar, very quick short webinar, will be on over-servicing. So looking at those reasons for over-servicing, sort of delving into those. So if you would like to join, please do let me know. I'll obviously send invites out afterwards. And I hope you'll find it useful. And I look forward to presenting the next one on over-servicing. If you would like me to send the recording as well, please do drop me an email. I'll put that in the comments box now. Okay, so you can do that as well. And also I'll release those the results for the poll that I put out at the beginning, verifying who's won the tickets to the B2B Awards. Okay, so I've just popped my email address in the comments box there. So if anybody would like, please do drop me one. All right, thanks ever so much, everybody, and I look forward to the overservicing one.